Hi, this is Franklin Marshall with African Trade Network, and I am so excited this morning to meet and talk about the BRICS. And African Trade Network is an organization focused on helping to develop entrepreneurs, self-sufficient entrepreneurs, and looking at how we can do trade on a global basis, working with Africa and the global community. This morning, we have some great guests, some of our members, some special guests that are coming on, and we'll be talking about the BRICS. The BRICS summit just took place in South Africa not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. First, I want to just kind of give an overview of what the BRICS is all about. A guy by the name of Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs. He was a chief. He was like the chief economist for Goldman Sachs. He came up with that acronym over a decade ago, talking about Brazil, Russia, India, and China. He talked about how they would become a force to reckon with in a few years down the road. And what ended up happening, this was just a conversation that he had over a decade ago, just talking about them as being emerging economies and how they were going to be the top dogs in about 2030, 2040. And so what ended up happening is China and Russia latched onto this idea and came together with Brazil, Russia, China, and India, these emerging economies, and they started to talk about how they can work together on developing their own system within the world. And so later on, around 2010, 12, the South African government joined that BRICS conglomerate. And so they've been working on a variety of things from banks and so forth to trading systems among themselves for about 17 years. And they have been meeting each year working on this. And so even coming up with currency for themselves. But this one that they had recently in South Africa was really extremely significant. This was the 15th summit. And so you've probably heard about it over the news and saw some things about a variety of topics that they were going to be talking about, and so I just wanted to bring that to our attention today and have us to kind of talk about the BRIC and to see how we as an organization, as we as business people, can work within that framework of the BRICS.
With the planned trip to South Africa, one of the people that's involved with that was sharing with me some things about it, but I have heard of it and the potential growth on the continent. That he was just saying, if Americans are going to get involved, this is the time to get involved because there's going to be such growth over the next few years. And if things gel together the way they are anticipating them, that this may be the most viable window of opportunity.
Well, I definitely agree with that. If you follow BRICS, like a place that I found it's a really good place to get good, accurate information about the world is a magazine called The Economist, which I read every week. And if you just look, so it's actually surprising it's lasted as long as it has because of the internal conflict. So I see it definitely. There's people that are involved in it, and part of it is anti-Americanism. So under Trump, the United States had a very isolationist policy. So we stopped, as much as Trump could stop it, we stopped providing aid and things like that to other countries. Now, Biden switched it around. And so Biden has been working with Vietnam and other countries in Asia to try and build our reputation and strength kind of as a buffer to China. In Africa, some of the countries have been being ripped off. So like Niger was being ripped off by the French for the uranium prices because the French originally owned Niger or colonized Niger. And so that's what they speak in Niger is, besides their local languages, the main language is French, unlike some of the other places. So French was buying uranium for a fraction of the world price, which they need because France is very dependent on nuclear energy. And just now, just like a few days ago, after the revolution that just happened in Niger, they jacked up the prices of uranium to match the world market, which is the French are making noises about attacking Niger because of it. And and so the reason I'm bringing that up is because that kind of shows that, it's an example of the dynamic between the imperialist powers that took over a lot of Africa and the realities of the countries in Africa still being ripped off by the West. So part of what BRICS is a reaction to that, people trying to do it. But the United States is trying to especially now under Biden, they're trying to counter the Silk Road Initiative of the Chinese, which was this the Chinese were going in and lending money at really low interest rates to a lot of these countries. But the Chinese become imperialists in that sense too, because if the countries are in debt to China, then China has a great deal of power and control over them as well. So I really agree with what Pamela just said, is that right now everything's really up in the air. There's questions if it'll even survive, how long it'll survive and in what state. So if we went back to Doug at the Commerce Department and started looking at ideas that we had of working in Africa, I think it's a right time, because I think the United States is really trying to counter the BRIC thing and is willing to put funding into that. So I think it provides a really good opportunity for us. And we don't know how long it'll last. I mean, instability is instability. So it's hard to make predictions. But I just wanted to bring that up and add that to the mix. And that's all I really want to say right now.
This thing is happening very close to us here. As you know, South Africa is about maybe a couple of hours flight from Dar es Salaam, if I can remember clearly, because I've been there 3-4 times. So it's not that far. And it was quite sensational when the meeting was going on in South Africa. The only problem was that you really couldn't get the inside of what was happening, really. So there were a lot of speculations about what was really being decided upon and talked about and conceded upon. But I got a chance to hear the Chinese ambassador to Tanzania, a certain lady, I can't recall her name. And this guy on television asked her and said, why does it seem that the whole world wants to join the BRICS? And I remember he said a few things that I kind of like retained, because I'm also very interested in this. One of the things she said was that the influence of BRICS has been increasingly growing across the world. I mean, like a lot more countries get to understand about the partnership, the model that they've chosen, which is rather than being an alliance, kind of a model where I'm sure we all know what it is with an alliance. When you are in group A, then they are wrong in group B, stuff like that. But she was trying to explain that in the BRICS, the model they have is basically partnership. We are not like aligned to this side or that side. We're just partnering for economic reasons. And then the other thing she said was they're really trying hard to be of help, trying to solve real problems, of their member state, So at least these are some of the things I can remember. Now, whether that is true or not, I really don't know. I'm just recalling from what I heard. And then I also know that there are 2 countries that have joined, new countries that have joined this group. I think from Africa, we have Ethiopia that have jumped on board. And it has raised a lot of concern, because when you think about Ethiopia, you have a lot of questions. But one thing that's for sure is that in Ethiopia, they do have quite a bit of minerals. So people are saying that maybe that could be something that prompted them to bring Ethiopia in. Taking into consideration that there have been a lot of countries that have wanted to join the BRICS. I think I checked somewhere, it said about 40 countries actually have wanted to join the BRICS over the years. So there's Ethiopia, and then I think there's Egypt also. So it's two countries from Africa. You have Ethiopia, you have Egypt, then you have Saudi Arabia, and you also have the UAE, United Arab Emirates, where you have Dubai, Argentina, and one more country. I can't remember. About 6 countries that have joined. And I think they're strong.
It's Iran.
Oh, yes. And somebody told me from the Tanzania Investment Center that Iran has a very strong pharmaceutical industry, with some of the finest medical invention and at very low price, plus textile as well. So much is available. But anyway, so those are some of the things that I just heard. Now, the other thing that happened, I think, which also raised some eyebrows, was that in the G20 meeting that happened in India, I think, about a few days ago. So Xi Jinping actually did not attend that, which brought a lot of questions because people started thinking, okay, this is such a very important meeting to the G20 member states, and China is really looked upon as, among those leading members. So the fact that they did not attend this meeting, but they were in the front rows down in South Africa at the BRICS meeting, kind of like raised the eyebrows of a lot of people that the BRICS now is sort of like holding sway and has a lot of influence, and it's so important to China, maybe even more importantly, maybe more so than even the G20. So, yeah, looks like it's going to be an organization that can pose a great challenge to the global north, so to speak. I mean, like the Americas and Europe and all of that. And we don't really know what's going on. I mean, we don't know what's being talked about behind closed doors. But since South Africa is pretty close to here, if that ever happens again, I promise you all, I will go. But by the way, why don't we all go there?
Someone said in one of the meetings that I attended, or at least was in on, maybe it was a YouTube video, but they said, whoever controls the resources of Africa controls the world. And is it true? Is it true that some of the wars and some of the issues that that the countries are dealing with right now, Russia is providing a lot of weaponry and resources for the people in the Sahel, and that is the French region, and that's what has caused the French to leave Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso. And so this thing is really interesting.
Yeah, but so, one of the things that is also worrying a lot of people, I think, is the union between Russia and China, and all the visitations that are happening and the discussion. I think that is something to really look at very closely. Because you don't really know what might happen out of those meetings that go between these two giants.
And looking at the BRICS, one of the things that my feeling was, this guy described the animals in Africa. You have a hyena that is attacking an animal, and then the hyena is starting to eat this leopard or eat this gazelle, and all of a sudden the hyena sees the lion coming, and then the hyena takes off and runs. The gazelle jumps up and runs away as the lion is chasing the hyena. So he described this as some of the African countries, and we may look at Niger and these countries in the Sahel as that type of example. But anyway, that's just kind of throwing in some fruitful thought, But Mr. Levi, can we get your perspective?
She said she was in the class and she wouldn't participate. She dropped a text message someplace in the chat room.
Well, Levi, not Leva, but Levi.
Oh, Levi.
Is he still here?
No,
Levi?
he's not. No, he's not.
He's not here?
Yeah.
Okay, there's another. Is that Wash? Wash Stalwart. Oh, that's Wash. Wash, it's good to see you, man.
Franklin, I'm sitting out. Sounds like a Vietnam War movie, doesn't it?
No, I can't hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it?
I don't think you can hear it.
Aircraft passing over. But
Okay.
you know, as I listen to this and watch this unfold, and you said something, he who controls Africa controls the world. I did a show on the Berlin Conference of 1884, 1885, when the European countries came together to reach an agreement on how they would divide the continent, which is what we see today. And I think because this Berlin conference is not in our history books, and so we don't know how this was so strategically done in the beginning, because the continent is the richest of all the continents, and that these countries came together to look at how, I think it was like 14 nations that came together to divide it. And you know, what is going to happen as people are learning, and you know, at what cost does the continent move forward after this strategic plan that was put in place as far back as 1885 in reducing their presence? How will these countries come together and do and reclaim what belongs to them? I mean, you're familiar with the Berlin Conference?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Well, one of the things that that's an interesting perspective is everyone has developed their countries and with a lot of the resources that they get from the continent of Africa.
Right.
And so when they can't get those resources easily, and it looks like this, they said that Russia plays chess and a way of weakening the West by minimizing the potential of resources with the European nations out of Africa is part of the warfare that's taking place, I think. And so it's an interesting take on looking at the continent of Africa, and if France can't get uranium, then I think it was, what was the president name? Was it Tigal? One of the French presidents said that if they didn't have the resources from Africa, they would be a third world country. I can't remember which one that was. Do you remember James or Don? I can't remember which French president said that. You know, one of the things that is really interesting is I did not know that France had a first right of refusal of any of the Francophone countries. The countries couldn't even do anything with their resources, but France had first right of refusal. So that meant that any kind of resources that those countries had, they had to go to France. And then France printed their money, and also France had control. They had to deposit all of their 80% of their resources in the French bank. It changed about 10 years ago to 50%, but prior to that, it was 80%. And France would lend them back the money. They would have to go to France to borrow that money from those countries. So it meant that perpetual poverty would persist. And so the resource war from the continent of Africa is really interesting to me, especially going to Africa and being there for 7 months. And I think being in Tanzania and looking at the continent and looking at people, I mean, as a tourist, it's really phenomenal, and it's like fascinating, because it's like you see people, some aspects of Tanzania and all over Africa are still, they look like, 400 years ago, and best enjoy seeing that. We see, people pushing carts and riding, donkeys, and we think, oh, hey, that's, wow, man, look at that, take a picture of that, let me get on that. and so one of the things that really dawned on me, I think, being in Africa, just sitting on the curbs in Tanzania and in different places of Africa as I was there for 7 months, it was like, it's not in the interest of anyone to advance these guys. Because if you do that, you can't get these resources for free anymore. So it was kind of a revelation, looking, that perspective. But on the other hand, there's extreme development going on. So it was this dichotomy, kind of perspective that I had. And
Franklin,
so
Frankly,
Yes.
you can go to some parts of the United States as well and say, these people, if they actually help these
Alabama.
people, you can go to Gainesville, Florida, you can go to any city and see
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
people, especially in
I
university
know they say
communities,
West Virginia too.
yeah, where people get grant because people are poor, but the money goes to everybody else, but not the people. And so they didn't come up with a new formula when they went to the continent. They were already exercising it, and they exercise it very well in the United States of America. But the propaganda is this is the greatest country in the world. It is, if you can make it. But even I saw communities in Memphis, in the city of Memphis, that look like, oh my goodness, is this still Memphis? And we have people in the city of Memphis living like this. It was mind blowing for me because if you just stay on the main streets and the main thoroughfares, you don't see that. But that's
Yeah, I guess
happening.
you're right. Yeah,
It's happening
yeah.
all around the country. And then from working on grants, knowing that the grants require you to have poor people.
Mm-mm.
In
Yeah.
order for your grant to be funded, you have to show a need and an alleged way that you're going to help. An alleged way that you're going to help. So it's a system that those who know how to implement it have done it exceedingly